Really coming from Africa and then being the firstborn and also like first generation, there's a lot of pressure. I was working in like a retail store. I was actually working on Walmart. Physically, I was there. Mentally, I wasn't there, and I would get so frustrated.
What is the salary range for people who are starting off in cloud computing?
Yearly wise, I would say like the medium is like 115.
Would you say it's easier to go to like a 4 or 5 year institute to get into cloud computing? Or would you say it's easier to like find a course and like learn how to do it yourself and then like try to break into it?
I'll say you have two options. One,
What is up, guys? Welcome to the second podcast of this channel. In this video, I have a very special guest, my friend Muhammed. He talks about his journey as being an immigrant, coming to the United States and getting into cloud computing and making about $121,000 a year. He's gonna share his journey and how he was able to break into cloud computing and how easily you can do that too. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to hit that like button. It really does help the channel grow, and it also helps other people who are trying to get into cloud computing or in any sort of tech job. So hopefully you guys enjoy the video. I'll see you guys there. Peace. All right, today we have a special guest, my friend Mo. I've been knowing this dude for about a year now. So happy to have you on the podcast. You're the second person that I've had on this podcast, and I think we're gonna have a really, really great conversation. Just to get things started, just kind of introduce yourself, who you are, and maybe just kind of tell the people what field of tech that you're in.
well, Haji, I want to say, thank you for having me on the call. And it's really nice hopping on the call with you. Yes, I think we've known each other for like a year, but I know your cousins and your friends for a very long time. Back from Buffalo, which is where I grew up and where I went to school in Buff State. And I majored in computer science. Uh, while I was in college, I didn't really know what exactly I wanted to focus in IT because this IT is kind of a general. So like not until towards the end of my college years that I started getting onto like networking with people and then figuring out like the real world, and then I discovered the cloud, and then I went into cloud computing, which is where I've been working on for the past 5 years, focusing on cloud computing.
Wow, that's really amazing. So, what degrees did you get in college, and how hard was it trying to study computer science in college? Like, how difficult was that for you?
Honestly, like now compared to me working in the real world with what I studied in college, uh, it wasn't really difficult. But the problem is in college, they don't really teach you what you are going to face in the real world. So it was easy. It's just about like doing your homework, like those annoying, tedious homework that nobody wants to do, but you still have to do them. That's the only hard part about it. But like it was not hard. Like, and I majored in just computer science, thing, computer information technology. I think some of them would say.
Yeah. So, while you were in college, did you like do any internships at all?
Not internship, but I was fortunate enough to get like a help desk job, which also counted towards my internship grade, which I was happy, that they counted that, because if you're already in the tech industry or in the field of what you major in, you can also ask them to like get credit for that and count it as your internship.
That's nice. So, when you first graduated, before you got into this cloud computing, what was the first like job that you had, like with your degree?
My first job I had with my degree, it was cloud computing. I was aiming for Linux administration. So after my graduation, I started taking like Linux classes. But when I get to the end of my Linux classes, and then I discovered cloud computing, which was also paying more than Linux administration. So I was like, why not just spend 1 or 2 months extra learn cloud computing and then go for high pay? So that's what I did. First one was cloud computing.
Yeah, and like I don't know a lot about cloud computing, and maybe some people listen to this podcast may not know. Like, what is the gist of like cloud computing? Like, what are you doing essentially within your job? If you can like kind of break it down for people who may not be familiar with this like career field.
So I like the simplest way I could put it is we all know data centers. Like, every company has data centers. Schools have data centers. Now, when you say cloud computing, it's just like giving access to your resources to people outside of your organization. Like that's the simplest way I could put it. Like it's just you still have your physical equipment, but you just giving access to like many people to use them.
That's really awesome. So when you first landed your first job, I just kind of want to know because you said your salary has kind of gone up since you started. Like, what is the salary range for people who are starting off in cloud computing, or what is like the average salary range?
Yearly wise, I would say like 115. So like, well, I would say it depend on like what knowledge you acquiring. If you just want the basic one, I've seen a lot of them like 90, like entry level, and that's just like cloud administration. You're not doing a lot of configuration, and you're not just going deep dive into it. But I would say like always target for the high one, and then learn like higher skills, so that way you like in between, and you have the chances of getting a higher pay. But I would say like in the medium is like 115.
15. Wow, that's amazing. And then when you were going into cloud computing and taking computer science classes in college, like did you always know like you wanted to get into like tech? And like what made you want to get a computer science degree? Like what made you decide that you wanted to do that?
So like for me, before even going into college, like right from high school or even before that, I used to mess around with like computers, and like because like sometimes I would break them, and at that time I didn't know anything about them, and then it turns out like whenever something breaks, like a computer breaks in a house, they always blaming me, and then they calling me to fix it because they know I'm the only one who's messing with them. So like it turns out I was even doing this for fun, like even before college. So I was like, okay, why not? I have to pick something to major in, so why not just do this as a major? And that's how I got into like doing IT. I did not have a second thought about it. I just go into it. I know I have to pick something, so I just pick and go.
Well, that just makes a lot of sense. That's really awesome. Like, can you explain to us like what your day to day look like from start to finish when you go into work? Like, what kind of things are you doing? Like when you go off to work in the morning, like are you checking emails? Like what does your day to day look like when you first step in the office and start work?
So for me, like I don't do a lot of like email check-in or communicating with the uh, product owner and stuff like that. I know my task that I'm going to work on already. Like so we go in like a sprint plan. So that's like a 2 weeks assignment that they gave you. So you already know what you're working on for the next 2 weeks or a week or two. So like it would, and my day to day will probably be like working on services that exist in the cloud that I can provision them or like connect them with one another. So or figuring out how a service works in the cloud, like just doing research, trying to find the best solution to achieve whatever goal the company has set up.
Yeah. So when you're working your job, how is like your performance assessed within like your company? Like how do they track how well you're performing at your job?
So you have the 2 weeks sprint. They give you an assignment to work on it, right? So it's breaking down into like so it's a 2 week sprint, but you can break it into like 5 weeks. So let's say if they give you to provision one resource on the cloud, maybe it would be like on day one you're gonna do like some research, know a little bit about that resource that you're going to create on the cloud. Day two, it will probably be like you starting to like putting the pieces together to build it. By day three, you should be done building it and then testing it, right? By day five, like just Monday to Friday is like 5 days, and then by day five, like you should be giving your status update, is it ready where it is? Like, did something go wrong? And then towards the next week of the sprint, which is left, you can do any kind of troubleshooting, or like you can show a demo to the team. But literally, like the assignment that they gave you, you have 2 weeks to show progress.
Okay. And then when you're doing updates, like is your supervisor looking at those updates, or is it like the team as a whole? Because I know you mentioned that.
So you're giving those updates as a team. Like you get on a daily call with the team because people need to know what they're working on, and because it might get to a point that someone is waiting for you to finish your task so they can pick it up and then continue with the next one. So that's why you have to share with the team.
Mm. And then what kind of software are you guys using like when you guys are working on your projects? I know this may be like kind of a weird question since I may not even know, but I'm just kind of interested.
So I would say tools that we use to do our task. Right now, on a daily basis, one of them that I use is like every day is Terraform for provisioning the resources on the cloud. Instead of doing the provisioning manually, it's just like going on the UI and then clicking here and there to create something. You're gonna write like Terraform script, and then you're just gonna execute that code, then it's going to create those for you. And you have those scripts, like you can execute them whenever you need to, instead of someone like just starting all over again.
Oh, so some of those scripts are like preset and you just kind of use them like over time.
Yes, you just use it all the time. So like to automate the task for you. And the second one is like GitHub. That's where like we store our code, and everybody can have access to it, so they can go and pick it up and then use it from there.
Okay, that's really cool. What would you say is like the hardest thing about your job? Like what's the hardest thing about cloud computing for you personally?
For me personally, like when it comes to cloud computing, they have a lot of services. Like you trying to figure out which tool that you're going to use, like which one is the best tool that you're going to use for your solution. So I think that's like the toughest thing. So that's why if they give you a problem, so let's say like if they said we want to create a employee directory, right? You have a lot of options to achieve that goal. So your task, like to narrow this down, is to come up with like 2 or 3 options, and then explain it to the team or to your supervisor, like what is the pros and cons of going with choice A or choice B, and then you kind of wear that with the company's like requirement, and then you make a choice.
So is more like is it difficult because it's hard to learn how to use those tools, or is it just because the tools are just kind of complicated? Like, what would you say you're at like with that difficulty?
Uh, I would not to learn those tools, but it's the complexity of it. Like those tools have a lot of features. Even you have a lot of tools, and then each tool have a lot of features. So you need to know the tool, and then you need to know what features it's offering.
Yeah. So when you're doing cloud computing, like, are you working from home or are you going to the office? Like, what does your day look like when you're working?
I did all of it actually. Some project that I was like 100% remote, and my current project is hybrid. So like it's 50-50.
Oh, so it just kind of depends.
Yeah, but they do have just like one specific day that is mandatory for you to be in the office, but the rest of the days, you can come to the office like 50%, and next week you can take off 50%, something like that.
Okay, so what would you say like the environment or like the work life is being in like cloud computing? Like what is it like, having a team, your supervisors, like what is that like? Like the work environment?
So I would say like it has a lot of flexibility, and the team is always there to support you. Even if you go into the office, like you still have flexibility. It doesn't mean that you're working on the clock, even though you go into the office. Like you already know what you need to do for the next 2 weeks or a week, right? So you can like balance your work and how you want to like do those things.
Yeah. So it's not like you're just working like 8 straight hours. It's like, okay, I'm gonna take this portion of like time, like 4 hours, work on this project and just like finish it and then take another like 3. Is it like that?
Yeah, you can do your schedule. I mean, I would say like it depends on the company, but what I've the one that I'm working with right now, is flexible, so I can come in like just be there in the morning, like 8 or 9. So it doesn't mean that like 8 I have to be in the door. It could be 8, 9, 10. Like just you can be flexible with that.
Yeah. So when you're working like a cloud computing, I really want to understand like how easy is it to move up to like a higher position? And then what are those some of those positions called? Like where is like the average like level that somebody can start at? And what is like the highest position that somebody can go to like in cloud computing?
So I would say like the average someone with can start up is like cloud administration. So like if you get any kind of certification like uh, administration, it could be from Azure or AWS. They both offer courses that they kind of introduce you to all the services that they are offering. But then if you want to go into like deep dive, like DevOps, like it kind of get to the point of like you actually using those tools, configuring them. Or I would say like architecting is also like a higher level. It's like you giving them uh, the the layout of like how you want these systems to be set up, and then the DevOps teams will like come and set them up.
Okay. So I know you mentioned that you went to college. I don't know if I remember how many years you went. I think you said like 4 or 5 years, right?
Yeah, 5 years of college.
So would you say it's easier to go to like a 4 or 5 year institute to get into cloud computing? Or would you say it's easier to like find a course and like learn how to do it yourself and then like try to break into it? Like, can you explain like which route would be a lot easier?
So it would be a lot easier for you to break into it compared to like going into college, because it really doesn't require you to like like spend 4 years of college just to learn cloud and then you go into it. But I would say like having a college degree is very important. It's not required. I know some people will say it's not required. It's true, but it's very important. It's going to open the doors for you for those opportunities. Because let's say if someone has a college degree and a cloud certification, but you just have cloud certification, they're definitely going to look at the person with the with the college degree and the cloud certification before they come to you.
And do you know how expensive those courses are, like those online cloud computing courses compared to like college?
So it depends. For college, like we're talking about 4 years degrees. I don't know how expensive that is, but like mainly focusing on those courses, like I'll say you have two options. One, you can like do those pre-recording self-paced courses. You can get someone Udemy, like for $20, $50. The highest I've seen is like $100, but that one is a self-paced, and it just depends on your learning style. But for me personally, I don't like that choice. Like I went for the one that you has like a virtual class. It's like a real class, but it's just virtually. So you take like you're taking one on one, you interacting with the class, with the professor, you ask them questions. Those ones will get you like interesting, and it will like keep you uh, consistent. So let's say you have the class scheduled like on the weekends. That's when I was taking my classes on the weekends. So Saturday, Sunday, 2 hours every day. You just have classes during that time, so you just schedule it. Doesn't matter what plans you're making. Like, you have classes, so you're gonna attend it. But if it is self-paced, you just be like, I'll do it later. I have something more important to do. And then you just keep on procrastinating.
No, I can definitely understand that. I know when you were talking about you went to college and you started networking and that kind of helped you get your job. What advice would you give to like people who are looking to take that online course and they want to find an internship or they want to find a job, but they don't know how to find that network or find people within that job or within that place they're looking for? What kind of tips would you give to people like networking wise and trying to find people who are in that same field?
So I will say, like, start looking for event, attend those events. So you definitely gonna find networking over there. You're gonna find people from your community. Uh, I know some people will say like LinkedIn, but I don't really like LinkedIn as a networking place. Like you did networking, but nothing is happening. You're not interacting with anybody. You can hit people up on LinkedIn, they're not gonna respond. LinkedIn, the way I see it, is just there for employers to like look at your history. Like, where did you go to school? Like, what kind of certifications do you have? And is it does it match with what you said on your resume with your, like your background history of your professional life? I think that's why it's just there. But I would say like attending event, that's a big one. And just ask your friends, like just maybe they might not be into cloud or something. They might know someone who is into it.
Yeah, I think those are some really, really good tips. So let's say, they find somebody and, they're networking now, this person that took the online courses. And now, they built their resume and they feel like they're ready, to start applying for jobs. Like what tips would you give to somebody that's looking to apply for cloud computing jobs? And also like what tips would you give to somebody when it comes to like doing the interviews for cloud computing?
My only tip that I like also took it in and stand by it is just apply and take that your initial step as a learning process as well, because you don't know what kind of questions they're going to ask you. You don't know what the interview setting look like. So just take that as a learning opportunity, and take note on those interviews. And I always like you can ask them for feedback. Be like, say at the end of the interviews, they'll ask you, "Do you have any questions?" Just ask them like, "Is there anything that you are lacking from this opportunity?" Or if they can give you feedback, just start taking those notes and say you can also ask them questions like, "Is there anything that they will want you to like, you know, make it a little bit clearer about your qualification for this role?" So then they'll start telling you, "We're looking for someone who has this, and that," and then like you did mention so and so, but can you elaborate on that? And then like you can really state it. But if you do like two or three interviews, like you're gonna find like two or three questions that are the same. So that's why you wanna do those. Just keep on taking those interviews, take down your notes, and then review them.
Yeah. So can you go into detail? Like, I don't know if you remember when landed your most recent job, what that interview process looks like before you land a job in cloud computing. Like, what does that look like?
So the interview process is usually like 1 to 2 rounds for most of them, and it's like 30 minutes long. Uh, a lot of them is like a video interview. So the first round interview probably most of the time it would be like a technical interview. Uh, they will start asking you like technical questions. If you know your tools and you know how to do your troubleshootings with those tools, how well do you know them, and what are you lacking? Are you open to learning new tools? Because like I said, if you're going for the cloud, there's a lot of tools, so you have to have that mindset of always wanting to learn. And then second round interview will probably be like with the manager. Uh, and with the manager, is most of the time it's just like for the manager to see if they like you. The manager doesn't really care much about the technical interview, but it's just your likability around the team. That's about it.
So when I know you mentioned a couple things about the interviews, what would you say is the one thing that cloud computing companies focus on when they're doing an interview? Like, what is that one thing that they focus on? Be like, okay, this is a person that I want for my team.
Uh, Experience. That's one thing that they look for from the tools that you have. So one way you can get that experience is like, I know a lot of people will say, without a job, how am I going to get experience? But start working on projects. Like there are a lot of projects out there that you can work on to get that experience, and then you can add it on your resume. It's good that you will have the knowledge of something, but a lot of the time, they want someone who actually use those tools.
I can understand that. Like when you were doing your interviews and you were trying to get a job, like how long did it take for you from the time that you graduated and the time that you landed a job? Like how long was that process?
I would say about a month of doing the interviews, and at that time, the cloud was like booming. So it was like one. when people like started going into the cloud and then companies start switching back to the cloud. So there was a lot of jobs, and I was doing like two interviews a day, three interviews a day. Like, I don't care. I was just taking the interview. I know I'm new to this and I need to learn. So I need to know what kind of questions like what does the industry look like out there before I go in. So I was just scheduling those interviews.
Yeah. So kind of what I'm getting from what you're saying is like the more interviews you'll do, the better you'll get because you'll kind of know like what they're talking about in each interview, basically.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, wow, that's really awesome. The one thing I wanted to ask is I know you kind of talked about like jobs are booming and stuff. Like, what do I don't know if there's a ton of layoffs in cloud computing, but if there are, what does that look like? And like, is it a lot of pressure like working in this industry? Do you feel like for yourself?
Well, cloud jobs were booming back in like 2019, 2020. But now we know, and because of the economy in the country, a lot of companies, they went out of business, bankruptcy, and it's like a lot of layoffs. So right now, it's a little bit tough. So, uh, pressure wise, I would say like a lot of the companies that are still in business, those I would say like big tech companies, and they probably work in a high paced environment. So they're not really giving a lot of rooms to people who are coming like fresh, just with knowledge. I know that a lot of them they are open to like training new hires, but they will tell you like we're not like they will not be able to train someone from the ground up.
So they're looking more like, okay, I want this experienced person. And when you talk about experience, are we talking about like 1 to 2 years, or is it more than that?
It depends on the position that you're applying for, right? So if you applying for like an entry level, 1 to 2 years, that's all is required. But if you're applying for like you know senior level, they're looking for like at least 7 years experience.
Oh, and then I never got to ask, but like what does salary look like for those senior level, positions in cloud computing?
No, medium 140. That's like the 130, 140, depending on the state, taxes, and also depending on the company too. Like big tech companies, they don't really pay a lot, but like startup companies, I know they do pay a lot. And also, if you doing like contracting, that also pays more than if you going in as a full time employee directly with the company.
That's another thing that you brought up startups and like already established companies. What would you say or what would you recommend to people that are, trying to break into cloud computing? Like, is it easier for you to try and get interviews with a startup company or an already established company?
There is a lot of already established company, and like I wouldn't say like just narrow yourself targeting startup companies. Just whatever you could get for you to get into the door, just take it and go. Don't limit yourself.
Yeah, no, that's some great advice. And just I want to kind of get into the benefits of like working in cloud computing. Like, what are some of the benefits that you get within your job being in cloud computing?
So there is a lot of room for growth in cloud computing. There is a lot of you know positions that you can go into cloud computing. Like when you say cloud computing, you're talking about cloud architect, you're talking about DevOps, DevSecOps, focusing on the security. So as long as those cloud services, you can go into either side. Like you're still in the cloud, so you have a lot of room for growth. I would say
Yeah. Like what would you say is like your ultimate goal with like cloud computing? Like where do you want to go with this like let's say 5 years into the future?
5 years into the future, one of the things I would say is a personal goal. Like I want to do more often of like teaching the new beginners how to get into the cloud, and like just have a lot of flexibility for me to be available to them so they can reach me out, and I can have like one-on-one classes sessions with them, show them about the cloud. And my professional goal is, I would say, like getting into like DevSecOps. That's like implementing security within the cloud. That's the goal that I have set up for like next 5 years from now. But in the tech industry, things change like every year or two, so you never know.
Yeah, that's really awesome that you mentioned that you want to teach the youth. Like, what's inspiring you to want to teach, younger people or even older people that are trying to get into tech?
So one of the things is like for also for my own personal benefit, like staying up to date with the technologies, and as I am teaching or sharing my knowledge with them, I'm also teaching myself. So that's one way I look at it. And another way is me growing up, like I did not have a lot of people for me to rely on for information. So a lot of them is just like I discovered by going into it. And I kind of struggle a lot through that process. So now, like I said, if I can help, I'm definitely like willing to help them.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And then how do you want to go about teaching the youth? Are you trying to develop courses, have like in-person classes? Like what ways are you trying to, teach people?
So like virtual classes, I would say just mostly it'll be like weekly scheduled classes and then teaching them.
That's awesome. Like I really like that concept. I think that would be really, really cool. And hopefully if you get that started someday, I would love to promote that to, other people who would be willing, to get into that. I kind of want to get into your background just a little bit. I know I'm from Africa and you probably are from too. Can you just kind of explain coming from your background and being in the position that you are in right now? Like, what does that feel like and what has that opportunity been for you? Like, can you just kind of go into detail about that?
There's a lot of pressure on me, man. Especially coming from Africa and then being the firstborn and also like first generation going to college, right? It's a lot of pressure. So I'm from Sudan, but I grew up in Ghana. So like I left Sudan back in 2003, and then I went to Ghana for like 8 years, and then from Ghana I came to the US like 2013 or 14. I think it's 2013.
Wow, that's amazing, seeing that journey. And then, when you came to the States, like how difficult was life for you, like being in the States?
Um, when I came initially, like I didn't know a lot about like the state and how the system is here. But like once I finished college, like right now I know. Like sometimes I even think about leaving this country. The only benefit in this country is like the opportunities, but other than that, I don't like the system at all.
Yeah. Can you talk about like how your life has changed since going into, cloud computing? I don't know what job you were working at before, you got into like cloud computing, but how has like your lifestyle like changed?
Uh, so that's really hard because I don't. So it changed and it made a huge difference to the point that I could not believe that I was at that point in life. It's a place that I always dreamed about, being there. So like in my college years, I was working in like a retail store. I was actually working on Walmart. For me, physically, I was there, but mentally, I wasn't there. I did work at Walmart, and I also work at like at the airport, the Buffalo airport. Uh, but like for me, like mentally, I was there. Mentally, I wasn't there, and I would get so frustrated because like I have all these high achievement goals that I have set up for myself, and the process is just taking a little slower to get there. And I just need to keep reminding myself that I need to be patient, stay in school, finish school, and then I will get there one day. But like when I got to that point of getting the cloud uh, jobs, like I couldn't believe it. Like sometimes I would like literally go on Google and then search up like what is like how much do you need to make to be in the top 10 in the US? Bro, I would going there and such because I couldn't believe it. But like right now, the economy is crazy, man.
Yeah, I mean, you deserve all of that success with the things that you've been through and what you're still doing now. And I think it's really, really amazing. I just kind of want to know, and hopefully the people will probably be, asking these questions too. But we're like, what was motivating you at that times when you were working at, Walmart, working at different retail stores? Like, what motivated you to keep going and staying in that path? Like, what was that one thing you felt like, oh, this was going to keep me going and, pursue my degree in, computer science and hopefully get a job in cloud computing?
I think it's just from like my background, man, where I'm from. Like a lot of the struggles that I had to go through coming here as a refugee, and like being a high achiever. So like I just don't see any reason why not to have that kind of mindset that you can do it. So I would say like just set the high standard for yourself. Like just be a high achiever, and I'm pretty sure whatever you set your mind into, you can get it.
That's really a great, great mindset to think about. So, you get this cloud computing job, you're looking up the amount of money that you're about to make. Like, how have you grown? You said you've been in cloud computing for 5 years now. How has your financial literacy or like the way you spend your money, how has it changed since the first time you started, cloud computing and where you're at now?
Bro, when I first started, like before us getting these jobs or like going into these high earning jobs, like we all have things that we want to splurge our money on, right? So I'm pretty sure like there's a lot of people out there who have made the same mistake, like just going out there probably purchasing their dream car, or like just getting a loan and getting a house. But bro, at this point, like where I get to right now, like I keep telling myself like that was the stupidest mistake that I ever made in my life, bro. That was crazy. I was still like, what was I thinking? But then now, like, I'm just being more careful with my money, the way I spend my money on, and like just trying to keep reminding myself there is different between being like rich than wealth, and also like there is there is no need for you to like show anybody that you are rich. Like, nobody cares, bro. At the end of the day, no one is going to come pay your car note for you. Like you the one who's gonna pay, bro.
No, I definitely want to hear you. I know you mentioned like you said you're trying to manage your money a lot better now. Like what kind of things are you investing in? Like what are you trying to do to make sure you keep your money and that you're investing it in good things that you're gonna see something like in the future with? Like what are you kind of doing right now to kind of help people who are maybe like, oh, I'm making this much money, but I don't really know exactly what to do with my money.
So like there's a lot of investment opportunities out there that you can do. One of the ones that I know is like a trucking business, which I do have a little bit of background on it, like managing them, running them. So put your money into it. And the best way you can go about spending your money is like, let's say if you want something nice, like a big purchase. Let's say if you want a new car, like one of the things that I had set up for myself that I was going to do is before I buy my dream car, I'm going to set up a business and then buy it through that business. But I didn't because I started getting all this money and I was like, no, I got this. I can do it, bro. And I just went ahead and buy the car. And then like a year after that, like now look where we are, the economy crashing. But definitely, like I would say if you want to make a big purchase, like just set up a business and then do that big purchase.
No, I think what you said is really amazing, and I think that there's one of the quotes from Big Dad Poor Rich Dad Poor Dad, which he says like if you're gonna buy something like a huge investment, like a car or like a house, find a business or find something that's gonna pay for that car or like for that house or whatever expensive thing that you're trying to buy. So I really like that mindset that you have right now, and I completely understand when you start to see a lot of money in your bank and you're just like, oh, I don't really want to, especially coming from a background like we are immigrants and not
Yeah.
really having anything, how hard that can be. So I know when we had our conversations when I met you, you said like you had family and you ended up buying a house for your family. Like what was that process like for you, buying a house for your family?
Right. It was a big achievement. And like compared to the house that we were living in before, and even like back from home, like not having a house to live in, right? So at this point, it's like a big achievement. I know, like right now, after that, I'm still thinking like that wasn't a good choice because I could have went for like a multi-unit house, and then we'll pay for yourself. But like like I said, you start getting all this money, and then you want to start spending it. That's why I went ahead and get the house.
Yeah, no, I hear you. That makes a lot of sense. I know you mentioned like you are, starting your own trucking business, and for me, I feel like I tell everybody like it's really important to have a business, start a business, so you're working for yourself. Like, what tips would you give to somebody that has money and wants to start their own business, but they don't know like where to start or what to start? Like, what advice would you give them to like kind of inspire them, to find their passion and start a business?
So I would say like finding a passion to starting your business. Uh, I mean, who doesn't want to be financially free, right? We all do, but sometimes you need to be disciplined and stay patient. Stay in that 9 to 5 job, make those money because uh, you're gonna need money for your business. Like I don't care like what kind of videos you watch on YouTube or what kind of articles you read. Like yeah, you can start a business with no money. Yes, it's possible, but how many hours are you gonna spend like setting up that business, and when is it going to start generating? Right? I would say like always target high risk businesses. With high risk comes high income.
That makes a lot of sense. No, that's some really, really good advice, and I really appreciate you, sharing that to the people. I want to go back to cloud computing and your job, and I think these are some of the things that I really like to focus on when I have people on the podcast. Is just kind of where their mental is at, and like how they're dealing with the stresses that come with their job. So when you're having a rough day or a rough week, and you're not having a good time, like how do you go about finding yourself and dealing with some of the stresses that can come with your job?
So being in the cloud industry or like just being in corporate America, right? You're gonna go through pressures left and right. One way that I look at it is like you have to embrace those pressures, and then because let's say if you break through that, right, and now you added more skills to yourself or whatever it is that they put in pressure on you to get it done. Like once you get it done, you added more skills to yourself. You add more skills, experience, knowledge to your resume, and then you can use that to like go for a high paying job or even like get a promotion from within your company. So I would say like don't spend too much time thinking about the pressure that they are giving you. Like it's gonna be there. The pressure is gonna come, but like I always just look at it from uh, I said, something that's positive on you.
Yeah, that's really important. And let's say like somebody's like on the edge about getting into cloud computing, whether they want to go to college and get a computer science degree or take a course. Like what tips or what would you say to kind of motivate those people that are still like on the edge? I'm just like, oh, I don't know if I really want to do it, and they're kind of feeling that pressure. Like what motivated you and what can you share with them that's kind of helped them like in their path right now?
So I would say like in the tech industry, right? There's a lot of certifications. So it doesn't matter what you got your degree in college. It doesn't really matter. Like you could always like just get a certification. And the most that I've seen is like it could take you anywhere between 4 to 6 months for you to master that and then like start applying for jobs. So you don't really need to go to college for like a computer science degree. It could be any degree, or even if you already have a degree, it doesn't mean that you have to go back and uh, get your degree in computer science. They just take a certification, and I would say like look for certifications that has the foundations. You don't want to jump because like let's say if you jump for a higher position, you get the certification, but you don't know the foundation. And then, let's say, luckily, you were able to convince them enough on the interview for you to get the job. And then pressure comes your way. So how are you going to handle that? So I would say, like always, like look at the foundation, learn the foundations.
No, those are some great pointers. You being in, cloud computing for 5 years, like is this a job that you would recommend to somebody, like personally? Like, would you recommend this to people? And if so, like, what type of person is kind of built for this type of job? Like, what kind of personalities are built for this job?
So like I would say someone who like going deep dive into things, or like detail oriented, like looking at things like at the complete scope of from their perspective, and also like the customer side perspective. Because let's say if you're creating something on the cloud, you also have to look at it from like the user's point of view as well. You're not just gonna create something and then say, okay, I created this. No, you have to also like be able to test it like in and out. And I would say like people who are willing to just learn new things, discover new things, stay up to date with the technologies, because it's gonna keep changing. Cloud service providers, they're gonna keep adding new things to their business, and then you have to learn those new things as well.
Yeah, that's really awesome. I really appreciate that advice. This is kind of like the last question I want to ask you. I feel like, being 18 years old and graduating high school, and, you're like in the middle of becoming an adult and still kind of young and relying on your parents. Like, what advice would you give to like your 18-year-old self that just graduated high school and is, looking to, do something? Like, what advice would you give yourself if you were 18 years old?
Oh, so that makes me think about how sometimes I think I wish I could like you know I could like go back and start college again, because there was a lot of things that I didn't do, that I keep telling myself, I wish I did this, I did that. Like interaction with like college activities, like get yourself involved into those kind of things. Like, it's not just about just doing your classes and then passing your classes. No, you want to get involved into a lot of activities. That way, you can help, like you can build your network. You can like build your public speaking skills. For me, like I was just that person that just go to class and then go back home, or just class and then go to work. I did not engage into any kind of things. And also, like the second thing that I would advise is like just work on get used to like just working on things, like and education wise, I would say like if you into computing, like just pick one programming language, and I would say just learn that. Don't worry about the rest of them, even if it is required for you to pass it. Just, you can do the bare minimum, pass the class, but just pick one programming language and then just master it, and the rest of them are gonna come easily.
That's some wonderful advice, man. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you for coming on the show and being the second person to be on the show. I had a really wonderful time, and I felt like I learned a lot of things about cloud computing and just a lot of things about you. Before we end, like the kind of podcast, do you have any last things you want to share with the audience before we end the podcast?
Uh, my last thing is like, so there's a lot of things that I keep, reminding myself, but then I don't see myself following them. One of them is like just keeping on reminding yourself that if you just keep on doing what you started, like you're gonna get what you're gonna achieve that goal, or you're gonna get something better. So all you need to do is just keep going.
Yeah, keep going every single day and just try to get 1% better.
Just keep going, man. The money is there. You need to claim it.
No, that's wonderful, wonderful advice, man. I really appreciate you for being on the show, and I know a lot of people are really gonna appreciate this episode, man. I appreciate you.
And whoever says, "Oh, I'm not into this industry because of money," that's a lie, bro. Go after that money.
Hey, money's important. Money's important.
It is, bro. And they say money, like you're not gonna get happiness, but money does buy happiness. To some level, I would say, of course, yeah. Who doesn't want to go on a vacation?
And driving a Lambo.
Exactly. I love free vacation.
No, I
Really.
definitely agree with you. When people say money don't buy happiness, I'm like, give me $1 million. I'm gonna show you what happiness looks like.
Exactly. Give me $1 million and you can see happiness.
No, no, I definitely agree, and I definitely appreciate you for sharing those words. Thank you for hopping on the podcast, man. I'll see you next time, bro.
Sure, man. I'm glad to share my experience, and like I said, I'm always here whenever you need anything. And like I said, I am willing to help if I can help.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it, bro.